I think thank you. We're going to get started. So my name is Dr. Pempo Chinkondenji, and I am an assistant professor at the University of North Dakota. And I'm also a co-founder of Loving Arms Malawi, and we're actually presenting today, centered on the work that we have done as a collective at Loving Arms. And so my colleagues will share and introduce as well when they start presenting. And so we just also wanted to say that we were going to present with two other girls who are part of Loving Arms, but they're in Malawi and they weren't able to make it because of timing and also just in terms of access to like the internet and Zoom. And so they recorded their presentations. And so we'll be able to hear from them from their recordings. And so I'll go ahead now and share my screen and then we can get started. Almost there. Okay, can you see my screen okay? All right, sounds good. And so like I said, we're presenting today as a Loving Arms Collective. And this work is centered on the 10 years of African girlhood rooted in participatory social transformation, autoethnographies of the everyday in rural Malawi. And like I said, we have the recordings for the two girls. They recorded in their native language, Chichewa. However, we tried to put in subtitles, and we do apologize if some of those subtitles are a bit choppy, but hopefully you're able to understand what they're sharing. And so just our agenda for today, we're going to start with Lavinia, who's going to share a little bit about who we are as Loving Arms, the work that we've been doing for the past 10 years, specifically identifying those initiatives that center on girlhood within rural Malawi. And then Sunga is going to come in and share a bit more about problematizing misrepresentations, especially when we think about African girlhood. And then we're going to share briefly our mode of inquiry, how we arrive at these narratives that we're going to share with you today. And each one of us is going to highlight one narrative and also just basically ensuring that we have conversation at the end of our session and we can get to engage in dialogue and you can ask questions that you have. And so now I will pass it on to my colleague, Lavinia.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pimple. My name is Lavinia Kaunda, and I am one of the co-founders at Loving Arms Malawi. Please go to the next slide. So Loving Arms Malawi is a nonprofit organization that was founded in June 2014 by myself and my colleague, Dr. Pembo Chinkondenji and Sunga Kupeani. The organization was founded and is led by women, but we are also a youth and community-centered nonprofit. And the primary goal of Loving Arms is to improve community livelihood and education participation for young people, especially for girls and young women in rural Malawi. And to achieve this, Loving Arms Malawi, which is called LAM for short, collaborates with local communities to overcome obstacles and systematic failures that lead to educational poverty. Now, our work at Loving Arms is mainly conducted in central Malawi and the surrounding district. But for the sake of this presentation, we're going to center it on Nambuma, which is an assemblage of 3 villages, namely Mboko, Ntandizi, and Nchenenje, which is in Dowa district in central Malawi. Now, before we decided to base to specifically base our work in Nambuma, we did a baseline survey, and from that we found out that Adowa district recorded high rates of school dropout, and so that's why we decided to specifically work with Nambuma and the assemblage of the 3 villages. Next slide, please. So as Loving Arms, we follow a communitarian approach, and that is informed by the Ubuntu, or also called Ubuntu philosophy. Now, this is an African philosophy that shapes communities, cultures, and individuals across Africa. Ubuntu is a philosophy centered on being human through others, with tenets like I am because we are. It stresses the importance of community and the interconnectedness of all human beings. Now, as Loving Arms, we make it intentional to work in proximity with community members as equal contributors of knowledge and learning partners. Now, as you may see on the side of our slide, we have some quick stats to show you of what we have done so far as Loving Arms. We have conducted 71 outreaches. We have reached over 940 students through our scholarship fund, and my colleague Sunga will speak more about that. And we also, our stats also show that we have 5 community partners, and this is because we also partner with communities from different traditional authorities outside of the 3 assemblage of villages that we mentioned earlier. Again, with our collective way of being as Malawians, informed by Ubuntu, we do not push away people and communities who want to partner with us. So we include them in our work as well. That's why our quick stats show 5 community partners. And we have also served a little over 66 families. Here it shows 66, but this number is, it could be more. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. And so in this presentation, we are going to highlight a few projects that we have done in the last 10 years under these 4 programs shown on the slide, and these are all girl-centered. Broadly, these programs raise awareness on gender and sexual violence and also focus on a holistic look at girls' education and well-being. So under our community initiatives, we have the Tipidanimanda Initiative and then Tandizi, also called the Lead Oyaka Mother Groups. We are going to share more about this as the presentation proceeds. We also have mentorship programs whereby we have Mama Mentors and Youth Mentorship. Mama Mentors, this is a women's mentorship program that prepares members of the mother group on how they are going to work well with the girls in our program. The Youth Mentorship program, this is between youth professionals and young people in Loving Arms Malawi, supporting them with career, academic, and also general advice. And under our outreaches programs, we have community outreaches and school outreaches, and all of these, they are generally to raise awareness on sexual violence in schools and communities, but also to teach preventative education to youth that are both in school and out of school. And last but not least, we have the scholarship fund. And with this, my colleague Sunga, who is coming up next, will share more about this. Now I give it up to my colleague who is coming up next to proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Lavinia, for getting us started. So as Lavinia has said, today we're focusing on the work that we do in Nambuma. And to effectively do that, we want to talk about some misrepresentations about African girlhood, specifically Malawian African girlhood. And so next slide, please. So we adopted, to effectively do this, we adopted a participatory design lens, but also we based on our working and learning experience, working with different communities, and over the past 10 years, so we critically examined the misrepresentation of African girlhood or Malawian girlhood. And what we found is that Malawian girls are excluded from knowledge-making discussions and spaces that marginalize their voices, experiences, and contributions. So they are looked at as the ones that provide stories of victimizations, but not necessarily as knowledge producers. They are also seen as collaborating targets, and as Kasuga has said, coded complicit victims. And so the problem with this is it takes away their urgency. It overlooks their resilience and their potential to influence change within their communities and beyond. This narrow view undermines their roles as active participants in schooling, in development, in economy, and in a lot of things. And so those are things that we're trying to counter. So our work, both in our work, and you will see as we go on, is we know that this exclusion makes them being looked at from the savior view, but also as people that need to be served and beneficiaries of empowerment. What we hope to do today with our presentation is to make you look at Malawian or African girls as, next slide, please. So as agents of their own futures, their own stories, our work or our presentation today mainly is drawing from our practitioner work in the communities, but also with the support of our scholarly work. But so our job today would be to make sure you and others, or the things that we do even in our work as Loving Arms, is that they are viewed as agents of change. And from that agent's perspective, it emphasizes the capacity, the autonomy to act independently and make their own choices. It also advocates for their recognition, not merely as study subject, but active contributors to knowledge and creation process. They're activists, they're also experts, and they are our design and implementation partners. So we hope this comes through as we talk about our work, even as you get to listen to what they have done. So I will pass it on to Pempo to talk about our the way that we have done and even our methodology.
Thank you, Sunga. And so like Sunga said, we wanted to share a bit more about how we arrive at some of these narratives and some of these constructions that we're sharing today. And like we've also highlighted, excuse me, the way we arrive at these narratives is really centered from a programmatic perspective. And so even when we were engaging in these discussions and just conversations around Malawian girlhood, we're also thinking of, what have we done for the past 10 years, and just thinking retrospectively to how we arrive at these different perspectives. And so engaging in this autoethnography for us is a form of communal storytelling. And we center on this work specifically drawing from our communitarian power and also thinking of communitarian centered development work within the Nambuma context. And again, this is largely informed by our Ubuntu-centered form of living. And so in this process, the personal experiences that we share for us in collaboration with the communities is also a form of power sharing, because we aim to serve as researchers in collaboration with our community and as practitioners as well, to illustrate how a community manifests the different ways of addressing social and cultural challenges. And so we intentionally remember the community work that we've done in the past 10 years as part of this knowledge-making process. And we also theorize our mode of inquiry by thinking with other scholars that have engaged in Black feminist and Afrofeminist thinking about memory work. And specifically for us, we think about it through our programs, the different initiatives we've designed. We engaged with different images and reports just to think back and to be able to reflect on those experiences while centering intentionally on Malawian girlhood, agency, and power. And so we wanted to also, again, I apologize, my slides just went forward. Okay, right there. All right, so again, programmatically, this was our process in engaging in this autoethnographic project. We engaged utilizing our Ubuntu-centered approach in what we are calling co-founder dialogues, and this was myself, Sunga, and Lavinia, to reflect on our experiences and construct new meanings of what African girlhood or Malawian girlhood looks like within the Nambuma context. And also as communitarian practitioners, we engaged in this knowledge-making process with our team. We do have a team in Malawi that helps us do all these different programs. And so being able to be in conversation with them to be able to see how we can continue to amplify the voices of the girls that we serve. And so again, we engaged with different cultural artifacts and at the same time being in conversation with the girls in our program at Loving Arms and identifying those new meanings to the lived experiences. And so there were different cultural artifacts that we used, like I mentioned, and we see these as form of autoethnographic texts that we were constantly unpacking. And at the same time, being able to utilize this to be able to help others to think with us on how we can continue to center on African girls' experiences. And so one thing we wanted to do today was to share with you one cultural artifact that we have been thinking with. And so this cultural artifact is actually a poem that was written by our colleague and friend, and his name is Marumbo Sichinga. He's a Malawian poet, and he came to one of our virtual events. And so he wrote this poem in the voice of a young girl who is part of the Loving Arms Collective, and just thinking through what education looks like for a girl in the Nambuma context. And so we're going to play this video for you. And then be able to share that perspective. I want to make sure that my computer sound is on. All right, it's on, and then I will go ahead and play.
Good evening, my name is Marumbo Sichinga, and I'm going to be reciting a poem for you. Far too many times I've been told I wouldn't amount to much, that somehow inside of me wasn't enough human to achieve basic things like education, as if life didn't come out of me, as if human wouldn't exist without me, and ironically, sometimes I'm punished for giving life. Too many times I've been told I'm too old and too naive and too poor to even dream, because some dreams cost more than a penny and a dollar, and there are no fountains to make wishes upon here, just deep wells to draw water from, as if my mind isn't a deep well that education should be pouring into. Far too many times I've been told I'm too much of female, of girl, of Eve, of part creation, too much of Mother Nation, of foundation, of baby maker, homemaker, made into an image of a beautiful bride to be, before I could be enough of girl, of woman, of Eve, of creation, just mother. This nation doesn't allow me to even dream of a universe where I exist as equal, as achieved, as learned, as free to be all I want to be, and more. But tonight, with arms stretched wide in love, the mental walls of oppression are slowly being broken down with loud cries and echoes that we are here and we belong and we too deserve a chance. And slowly the walls of Jericho fall with each shout and walk around the village. But tonight, poems and songs are written as keys to unlock minds and to help us dream up runways for our dreams to take flight. I have etched smiles in the skies and upon hearts with thankfulness for all those that have broken their backs to make it possible for us to stand straight. I have held knowledge in one hand, given life in another, and have been given the grace to come back and learn again. I have seen invisible hands fight the stronghold of my beauty so that I would be seen more than just a bride, more as a seed waiting to be watered and allowed to grow into the tree of knowledge, just earning good and evil for myself, such that a good man to marry from a distance would be seen clearly. I've seen a bright future, standing on the shoulders of education and the giants that have worked hard to build a better present for me. What a gift this has been. So tonight is for the doubters and the naysayers, and for those who have been told that it's impossible, for those who have been looked down upon and shunned, for those who have had their words taken from them, for those that didn't even know that they had a voice, for those who have been told that they are not enough. Tonight, as a testament of how far we have come and how much more there is to do, because too many times I've been told I wouldn't amount to much. But more times than not, I have seen myself overcome and be more. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so I'll go ahead and pass it on to Sunga. Oh, actually, no, it's my turn. All right, so we're now going on just drawing from Marumbo's poem that just decenters those essentialist narratives around Malawian or African girlhood. We want to start from there and then connect to some of the narratives that we saw come out as we reflected on these experiences, these culture artifacts, and the work that we have done. And so the first narrative is girl power and social capital. And so again, through our Ubuntu-centric organizational approach, we're using social capital at Loving Arms Malawi to describe relationships between the individuals, particularly the girls that we serve and their families, their teachers, their traditional and local leaders in the communities that they live, their peers, and others in the community, with the intentionality of seeing how those relationships facilitate social trust and support that is needed to strengthen those communities. And so as Loving Arms, we are intentionally frontlining community engagement and community collaboration to ensure that those supports exist. And so from our communitarian conversations, particularly drawing from our programming, we're seeing social capital to center on the social networks, the relationships and connections in Nambuma that enable collaboration and mutual support with the communities in order to support girlhood, and specifically within communitarian participatory development. And so the picture on the screen for us is a representation of social capital. That image was taken on April 18, 2021 as part of the one of the community outreaches that we do. And so this one was specifically targeting a school in Dowa, the same district where Nambuma is located. And Dowa Secondary School has over 350 students, and we were able to identify 30 volunteers. And these were young professionals and entrepreneurs from Malawi within Lilongwe, to share their experiences with the students that we served in that school, and to build a collective base to support one another as a community. And so the purpose of this event for us was to build social cohesion, establish relationships with potential mentors with similar backgrounds, and also to dismantle any stereotypes related to schooling and post-secondary experiences. And so this image for us is an embodiment of the many ways in which, as Loving Arms, we see what social capital looks like in the different contexts that we work in, even for the youth and the girls that we serve. And so as we think about social capital and community, we're also thinking with different questions. And one of the questions we're thinking with is, who is the community in this work and in the context that we serve? And at the same time, what systems of power must be dismantled to ensure authentic relationships and connections? And so we also wanted to share with you some of the quotations that came out of our communitarian conversations. And we had an initiative called Tigirani Manja, which one of us is going to share a bit more about, and Lavinia briefly highlighted. But these quotes came from community members who are part of these conversations to ensure that we center on supporting the girls in these communities. And so one of the high-ranking local authorities who attended this event that we had, or this program, they intentionally highlighted the need to protect children, especially girls, when going to school, and to take this as a serious matter, because if you look at a lot of research that's been written around girls' education within Malawi or some of the surrounding countries, you'll be able to see that there's a lot of push out of girls from the school system and different practices that limit their access to education. And so being able to partner with the communities and intentionally highlighting how teachers and the community can work together to ensure that the girls are supported to continue with their education. And in the second quote, that was by a head teacher who was specifically addressing one of the key challenges within primary and secondary school education, which is the experience of in-school pregnancy and student motherhood. And so in his quote there, he's highlighting that they do not expel girls who are pregnant like the old head teachers used to do. But they intentionally create space for the pregnant girls to be in the classroom and to support them and provide the counseling that they need. And so here we're seeing them advocating for against the exclusion of pregnant girls. And there's a lot of history tied to that experience that's rooted in colonization and patriarchal beliefs and practices. And so we're seeing the community working together to intentionally resist that. And so as an organization, and especially with our Ubuntu-centric approach, one common thing that we are seeing and continue to see, and this is a very common African saying where we say that it takes a village to raise a child. And this is something that we see in the work that we do. And this means that, you need various people in the Nambuma community to be able to get together to provide a safe, healthy environment for the girls, and at the same time, centering on their individual development within the collective space. And also, one thing that we've been seeing is that school-based support, home-based support, and community support are not mutually exclusive, which means that all these forms of support need to occur at the same time to ensure a wraparound form of care that is holistic. And also, we continue to see a centrality on community collaboration and participation, and involving all members of society. And at the same time, we're seeing that there's an emphasis on safeguarding girls' rights, and as a top priority in the Nambuma community. And also, as a village, the Nambuma community engages in a form of communitarian refusal and resistance to the exclusion of pregnant girls in primary and secondary school, like we saw in the quote from the head teacher. And this again goes back to colonization. In Malawi, which was a British protectorate, they had missionary schools, and in those schools, they would refuse pregnant girls to be in that space because it was deemed unacceptable. And so we're seeing the communities starting to push back against some of those practices. And then lastly, we see girl-centered motivation among the peers as a form of power. And so this mutual encouragement that we see among the girls themselves fosters a form of trust and a sense of belonging, all of which we see them as key elements of social capital. And so through the work that we do, we see girls supporting each other and creating girls' clubs, identifying ways to ensure they all succeed. And so we have a short video of a woman who was encouraged and motivated by the work that the girls that we serve in the Nambuma community do. And so we're going to briefly share that with you.
Ineyo ndine mzimayi ndi ana atatu. Ndidayamba skulu pachimbalu form 1. Koma monse mmene ndimamba form 1 panali zambiri zolepheretsa. Ndipo ndidafuna mpaka ndisiye. Koma ndidayambobwera kunoku kudzaona inuyo kumatilimbikitsa, koma ndimabva kulimbikitsika moti kuchokera nthawi imeneyo sinapangenso chiganizo chonse ya skulu. Wow. Moti poonanso kuti mmene mwapangira zathuwa kuwapatsa mphatso. Apapa ndendalimbikitsika chazoti kulimbikitsika. Ndipo loko wina wakananena kuti kundikokaso siketi khala pasi sindingakhale. Olo wina wakanachita kuti mwakuti sindingakhale. Panopa ndendupita chitsogolo. Kuti kaya ku university ko kaya ndikuti posatengera tsiku langa ndikafike ku basi. Amen.
All right, thank you. And I'll pass it on to Sunga now.
Now you can pass it on to me. Thank you so much, Dr. Pampa, for that. And I'm going to take us into our girl economy. So this is the part we'll talk about our investment in girlhood and why we have made those decisions and what that looks like. So when we began our work in Nambuma, we quickly realized that we needed to align our financial commitments with even our organizational commitments. And so after engaging in dialogues with like our community, but also with within ourselves, like the community dialogues or the co-founder dialogues, we decided to focus our investment in supporting girlhood. So we can go to the next slide. So this decision was based on the understanding that investing in community, particularly in girls and women, is crucial for societal development. It gives them, again, as I mentioned earlier, the autonomy and partnership needed to break the circle of poverty and lead community development initiatives. This is because our work is done in communities that are marginalized in one way or the other, and therefore there is a level of poverty that is experienced in there. So we made a decision that we wanted to invest in girlhood. We also wanted to invest in education, and our commitment to investing, particularly in secondary school education, stems from understanding the significant impact of girls' secondary education on unlocking worldwide opportunities. Patricia talks about this at the end, so you get to hear that from her as well. But even UNICEF said that supporting girls finish secondary school could boost our country's GDP by 10%. So we're like, hey, why not be part of that? And so next slide. Because we're a nonprofit, we needed to make sure that investing in education becomes a participatory thing. So our participatory investment framework takes a holistic approach and that integrates continuous learning, flexibility, and the principle of Ubuntu, I am because we are, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of all our partners. So communities, schools, and even other stakeholders. We prioritize the iterative process, which allows for a refinement of strategies based on the feedback on the ground. So for example, sometimes we give packages and then we get feedback from the girls that I want to go to a different schools, or like we're open to changing the way things are done because on the ground, the realities are different and these priorities that happens that are ever changing. This approach, the iterative process or the flexible approach that we have taken fosters a dynamic investment climate where learning from each phase informs our next phase or what we're going to do, how we're going to pivot, and how we are going to grow as an organization. With that shared journey towards sustainable progress, we ensure that we are investing in this community and our community is yielding financial returns, and we are positively impacting the community. And so we can go to the next slide. So our next slide, this one is just going to give you like a quick overview of our past decade. Our organization has been committed to improving secondary education. So the statistics you see here are our commitment to girlhood investment. So investing in girls' education, in secondary education, but also in entrepreneurship for the women. I will briefly talk about that and why we made those decisions and how we went into that, but we just wanted to show you a picture of how we have prioritized financially investment through scholarships and entrepreneur packages. And then we can go to the next slide. So I will talk about our scholarship fund, which is called the Nyenyezi Owala Scholarship Fund, which was co-designed by our mother group, the community, and also the girls themselves, because we can't design something without them. So one of the reasons why we did this was we were responding to a profound necessity within Central Malawi. We had seen that there was a lot of things that were going on. There were a lot of courses being put out. So in Malawi, secondary education is not free. Primary education is free, but secondary education isn't. So that's where we see a big drop. So we wanted to put girls in the fund that had been selected to high competitive high schools, or these would be like schools that they get selected into, because in Malawi, to go to secondary school, you have to get selected into that. But then they faced this financial difficulty. So we adopted the participatory approach that I talked about earlier and ensured that our fund embodies a commitment to collaborative decision-making and engagement, providing relevant and impactful educational opportunities. So as much as it is a fund, we also look at ways where we can create education opportunities, but also, as I said, it's an iterative process. So when the girls decide, hey, we don't want to go to this school, but I would rather go to this school because of social and personal reasons, we partner with them, because our role in this is not necessarily as funders, but as partners supporting them on this journey. Similarly, we have taken the same approach with our community groups. Next slide. So our community groups, there is a lot of things that I can talk about of why we decided to invest in a community in addition to having a scholarship fund, but I'll just focus on like our investment with the women's groups. And these are all under the Mundanity initiative, because we realize part of that girlhood is also supporting the women in this community. And so we followed, again, similar logic with the scholarship fund. And so this this is like the decision making becomes collaborative, and we're providing other opportunities, and not necessarily just financial opportunities and networks for the women in this community. And one thing I wanted to highlight is this initiative, or this work of investing in women entrepreneurship groups, has been one of our most iterative investment process, because the priorities shift. Our mother group priorities shift as well. So as a collective, we have strived to cultivate a culture of shared progress through both of these initiatives, highlighting a solid commitment to fostering individual growth, making education more accessible, and a collective betterment of the community. So be it through the fund or through the community groups. Yeah. And I think I'll pass it on to Lavinia. Oh, and this is just a quote from Patricia, but this, I think, highlights one of the things that we do. She uses the word, "they held my hand." In Chichewa, that's Tigwilane Manja, which is ironic because that's also a name of a project that we do. But I think this quote embodies what we try to do, is like, we're walking with them. We're not necessarily funding, or we don't want to be looked at that, but we want to be looked at as partners in schooling, and just looking at them as our co-creators. And then I'll pass it to Lavinia.
Thank you, Sunga. I will take us through girl representation and resistance in our organization, Loving Arms. So as we have heard from my colleagues, our work at Loving Arms is community-centered and also girl-focused. As co-founders, we came to this paradigm through our mode of inquiry, which is collective dialogues. And one of the things that we saw in our narratives was that we are very intentional about resisting homogenizing and institutionalizing the girls that we serve in our organization. And also in the same way, the girls push back against any forms of oppression of essentialist narratives, as we have come to observe through the work that we have done with them for the past 10 years. And so because of this, we intentionally embrace the heterogeneity of girlhood. And even as you may have seen in the video, where Marumbo pushed back against the essentialist narratives in the poem. And so we are going to be talking about girl representation and resistance in this part of the presentation. And so please, next slide. Thank you. And so our girl advocacy work and activities at Loving Arms intentionally involves the girls in the nonprofit in order to instill ownership of the activities and programs implemented. Like my colleague Sunga said, we don't want to be like, oh, we as Loving Arms co-founders are here in your community and we're going to implement ABCD activities. And so once those activities are implemented and done, then we're going to leave them and go back wherever we came from. And then that's the end of the activity or the project. We don't want to follow that kind of approach. And so we make it intentional to be co-owners of every initiative that we are doing in our organization in order to instill ownership. We make it intentional to give our girls the platform to voice and even name the concerns that they are facing relating to their studies or even just life in general. And beyond that, we work alongside them in brainstorm possible solutions to be employed in order to address the concerns or the problems that they have, because we believe that we don't want to just impose solutions to the problems that they share with us, because that's not the approach we want to take. We believe that local solutions solve local problems. We want them to be part of the process of coming to the solutions that will eventually solve the problems that they are facing. So we have girl-centered community dialogues to ask the girls what they want for us to see in them, and how they want us as partners, equal partners with them, to engage with them as Loving Arms, how they want to be perceived as girls from Nambuma. And from what we got from our conversations with the girls, we learned that the girls want to be perceived as talented girls, creative girls, actors, poetic, and not poverty-centered, and not through a poverty-centered lens, which is very common in mainstream discourse around African girlhood. And so next slide, please. Thank you. And so our girls, as we have already said, they are not very silent in matters that are very important to them. We involve them in the activities and the programs that we do. And also we give them the right to choose. And because they know that their voices matter, their voices and their concerns are validated, they are able and they're free to come to us as equal partners with their concerns. For example, through our scholarship fund, one of the, a few of the girls who were attending a certain school in Nambuma, they came to us and raised an issue that, well, we feel that our commute to our school is very long, and that is taking away time for us to study because we're very tired. And by the time we get to school, we just don't concentrate that well. So they suggested, we asked them, okay, so what do you suggest? What would be the possible solution to this problem? Should we change schools? They said, no, we don't want to change schools. We like our school, but what if instead of going to school every day, of commuting every day, what if you find, what if we go to, we find a house and board there and be like a self-boarding students? So we're like, oh, that's a great idea. And that's exactly what we did. We rented out a house for them, and we asked some of the women from our mother group initiative to live together with them, you know, as for security purposes. And that's exactly what we did. We did that, and the girls were happy. And so that's just one example of where we as Loving Arms co-founders, we are flexible in how we work together with the girls in our program, and also that the girls are free and they know that our voices matter, and so we are free to talk and raise our issues with them. Our work also entails resisting hyper-invisibility of girlhood. Now, I would like to make it known right now that we as Malawians, we appreciate our culture, but one of the cultural aspects in Malawi is that with age comes power and authority. And because of this, sometimes it is hard for young people, young girls, to have a voice in spaces where there are older people. But at Loving Arms, we resist this kind of hyper-invisibility of girls, especially in centering the voices of our girls. We choose to do the opposite of that by not stopping at listening to the girls, but also even involving them in advocacy campaigns as well. And we had one of our main highlights in this presentation is the launching of one of the initiatives, or one of the programs in our community called the Tigirani Manja Initiative. This is on this launch, we brought together affluent traditional authorities, school leaders, parents, child protection officers, and community members. And on this day, the highlight was our girls in the program. They were involved in planning of the event of the launch. They were also involved in the activities that took place on that day. And so next slide, please. Thank you. And so this is Girani Manja Initiative. In Chichewa, this is a Chichewa word to Girani Manja, of which in English it means let's hold hands. Again, working together with the community, working together with our girls as equal partners. Our collaboration with the community members together with other authority figures like we mentioned traditional authorities, school leaders, child protection officers, shows our collective way of being informed by Ubuntu. So on this day, the launch of the Tigirani Manja Initiative, this initiative was implemented by Loving Arms Malawi in response to COVID-19 related challenges. And this is the only event we've had at Loving Arms that brought together different people from different walks of life, from traditional authorities to the youngest person in the community in Nambuma. The initiative was aimed to tackle issues such as adolescent pregnancy, child marriage, sexual violence, and gender inequalities in education. And this our collaboration on Tugulani Manje initiative resulted in the creation of girl-led bylaws to be followed by the entire community. And our girls facilitated and advocated for the creation of bylaws that protected them. And they had the power and the agency to say, well, this specific bylaw will not protect us in any way. What if we revise it? And the community and the people were able to listen to them, which also made us see that our girls are able to advocate for themselves. They are not silent on matters that are important to them. And so this was a learning moment for us. Next slide, please. This was a learning moment for us. Together with all of the 10 years that we have worked with them, we have had moments, numerous moments where we have learned so much from our girls. Learning from them now becomes an iteration that poverty is not how the girls want to be looked at. As such, Loving Hands Malawi does not capitalize on poverty experiences, on the poverty experienced by the girls in our program. Rather, we highlight other areas in the lives of the girls that they are strong in and need support in. Our focus is not on the struggles and the pain as the central narrative, but also look out intentionally with their joy, their hope and resistance. You know, they want to be seen as creative, they want to be seen as actors, they want to be seen as content creators, and all of that is beautiful, and that's what we capitalize on as Loving Arms. And also, we do not put pictures of our girls on a website without their consent. This is because we know that our girls have got the power to choose. So if they choose to say, yes, you can put up our pictures on the website, we go ahead. And if they say, no, we don't. Because of that, we also employ humanizing approaches in our research, but also even in the activities that we conduct, and also even in the programs that we do to protect the dignity of our girls and seeing them the way they want to see themselves. They are girls. They want to be seen as girls who tell their own story. They want to be seen as girls who can advocate for themselves. And so with that, we are going to show you the two videos from the girls that were not able to be here presently because of time differences, but we have videos that we recorded for them. I'll ask my colleagues to play.
Thank you, Lavinia. And so now we're shifting to our last narrative, which is Girl Voice Amplified and Counter-Storying. And we do want to say, we shared this earlier, that the girls share their narratives in their native tongue. However, we put in subtitles, but we do apologize if some of the subtitles are a bit choppy, but hopefully you'll be able to read and listen to their stories.
Dzina langa ndine Fortune Malungo, ndine mtsikana wa zaka 19, ndimakhala ku Malawi, m'boma la Dowa kuna Mbuma. Ndapeza mapoints 26 pa chimbalu CDSS chaka chimene chapita cha 2023.
Okay, Fortune, iweyo school umayiona bwanji?
School ndimayiona bwino kwambiri, makamaka kumbali yoti andipewetsa zinthu zambiri ngati kuti kutengeka kwa atsikana chifukwa kuti ndimakhala busy kwambiri panga za school. Komanso nthawi zambiri makhala ngati malo amene ndimakhala ngati kuti kukayiwalirako mavuto akunyumba chifukwa kunyumba ndi kumakhala mavuto ambirimbiri. Then ndikapita school mapeza zoti chifukwa cha zinzanga komanso chifukwa zimene timaphunzira zimapeza zoti zimandilimbikitsa, kumapeza zoti moyo uyenda bwino chifukwa cha school.
Kupatulako kuphunzira ndi kukhoza mayeso ku school, ndi chaniso china chimene school yakuthandiza?
Kupatulako kuphunzira ndi zina, school yandithandiza makamaka ngati kumbali ya maluso, amatipanga encourage kuti tizionetsa maluso. Ngati ni luso loyimba, ndamatilimbikitsa kuti tiziyimba, kuti tizionetsa maluso athu, kumatilimbikitsa kuti tidzafikire pena pake.
Chabwino. Chimene chinakupangitsa kuti ulimbikire school ndi chani?
Chimene chandipangitsa kuti ndilimbikire school, makamaka ndimasilira malo models akabwera kwathu kuno. chifukwa choti kutoko ndeni kumudzi malomodezi amakhala ochepa ndeti maona zoti ndi anthu apamwamba kwambiri ndeti makhala zoti ndimasirira kwambiri ifeso tidzafikire pamenepopo komanso akamatiuza zoti skulu yankhula china chilichonse tisamatengere mavuto akunyumba ndeno zimene zimatilimbikitsa kwambiri kuti tisamayang'aninso mbuyo koma ndizipanga focus kuti tipange achieve chimene timafuna.
Iweyo unapanga zotani kuti ufikire mapoints amene unakhoza?
Ineyo nthawi zambiri ndimakonda kuwerenga simakhala ndi nthawi yosewera anzinzanga ndimatha kugawa nthawi kawiri makamaka kugawa nthawi simatengera zimene apanga anzanga ngati mwachitsanzo nani personal timetable kuti ndizitsatira kuti ndisamakhala ndi nthawi yosewera komanso kakhala mu class sindimalola zoti munthu azindisokoneza ndikakhala zoti ndakhala pa malo poti pali munthu osokosera ndimatha kuchokapo kazinena kuti ndina matama komano bora ndikamamaliza leso nthawi zoti ndamva chimene maphunziracho.
Chabwino. Iweyo skulu yako unayendamo bwanji kuchokera tsiku limene unayamba kudzafikira tsiku limene munakumana ndi Loving Arms kudzafikira tsiku la lero, skulu yako wayendamo bwanji?
Kuyenda skulu kuyambirira unali wabwino chifukwa makolo onse anali limodzi zimayenda bwinobwino kenako tapeza zoti kholo limodzi lamalira zinthu zidadzakhala ngati kuti zavuta chithandizo chimasowa ku skulu kwati mapitabe komabe timapeza zoti timabwerera mbwe tikamaganiza mavuto akunyumba ngakhale amatilimbikitsabe komano timapeza zoti performance imatsika tikamaganizira za mavuto akunyumba nthawi timayigawa pena kumaganizira za mavuto amene tinawo komano tapeza zoti kwabwera bungwe la Loving Arms akamabweretsa malo models nkumatilimbikitsa makamakaso nkhani ya fees ndesi timaganizanso zina basi timangoganiza zoti avondo pano tapezano yankho tikhoza kukwanitsano chimene timafuna chifukwa fees siusowa malisources enaso amatha kubweretsera ngati ife atsikana kuti tisamakhala kuvutika kwambiri ndayo skulu.
Nanga ndinebadilisha mambo emakhala Lilongwe Central Region of Malawi ndi zaka 20 and ndinapeza 20 points last year kuchokera pa Chimbalu Community Secondary School.
Patricia, iweyo skulu umayiona bwanji?
Ine skulu ndimayiona bwino and secondary yanga ndinayiona so bwino chifukwa ndimakhala nawo mgulano okhoza pa skulu yathu ndeno amene mandimvetsa kuwoma ndikakhala ku skulu malinga langa mandisangalatsa kwambiri.
Chimene chinakupangitsa iweyo kuti ulimbikire skulu ndi chani?
Chimene chinandipangitsa ine kuti ndimbikire skulu malo models amene ndimaona kudera la kwathu ndiso aphunzitsi ndikamaona ndimakhala ndikunyadira ndikusilira ndiso ndimafuna tidzafikira pamenepo ndiso ndimafuna tidzakhala moyo tidalira tsogolo muno kuchokera mbali ya skulu.
Iweyo wanena kuti unakhoza 20 points. Umapanga chani chimene chinapangitsa kuti ufikire kukakhoza 20 points?
Ine ndimalimbikira kuwerenga ma discussion mapanga nawo participate ndiso ndikakhala class ndimakhala ndichidwi kwa mphunzitsi uonetsetsa umvetsetsa pamene sinavepo ndimafunsa kuti akabwera malizati otsalira abwera malizati ndikheda kugulana okhoza ndithu kuti zimene mafuna ndidzafikire ndithu mpaka nazidzakwaniritsidwa.
Iweyo skulu yako unayendamo bwanji? Ungandifotokozerepo zovuta kaya zokoma zimene umakumana nazo mmene unayendera skulu yako kuchokera nthawi imene unayamba kuzafika panopa pa nthawi imene wakhoza 20 points?
Ine skulu yanga nayenda mabwino chifukwa ku skulu ndimalandira mphatso yokhoza and ndimapezeka so mavuto ena kangati aphunzitsi kayana kumene umanditsitsira pasi zifaya zokamba zawo ine zimene zonse ndimalabadira ndimakhala ndi goal yoti ndidzakwanitse then ndimaganiza zimene zozo kuti basi ine kayena zipanga zinazo sindimazitengera kaya zinayankhula zoyipa sindimakhala nazo njidi fo makhala nchidini yani ndimaphunzira.
Inalipo nthawi imene unasiyako skulu usanakumane ndi awawa a Loving Arms?
Ayi panali benthu amene nasiya ku skulu.
Chabwino. Unanena kuti panali zinthu zina zimene anzako amayankhula zoti zikhoza kukankhira pansi ungatifotokozere kuti zinthu zimenezi zinali chani ndi chani?
Zinthu zimene zinali zoti amaniseka kuti ine ndimangolimbikira skulu sindimapanga zibwezi ndimangokhala busy umawerenga ndidzapanga misala ni sukulu ndena zimene zopena zimanditsira mbuyo nkamaganiza pena basi ndimakhala zosoti ani serious kwambiri.
Chabwino. Kodi chimene umachiona kuti ndi chabwino ndi chani pa skulu yoyendera kapena ya boarding?
Skulu ya boarding chimene machiona chabwino munthu amakhala nthawi zonse apanga za skulu. Pamene akhala yoyendera ija umakhala busy kunyumba kuja kupatseko ntchito chani ndeno nthawi skulu umayigawa ntchito zapakhomo ndeno imakhala ija kuti zipanga za skulu.
Chabwino. Kukhala mtsikana wakunambuma Africa umaziona bwanji?
Ine ndimaziona bwino chifukwa kuti mulungu adanibadwitsa kuno kumalawi kuno ndeni manyadira chifukwa ndimene ananeneza naye kuti ndikhale kuno kumalawi. And ukhala kumalawi kunonso ndimasilira ndakhala kwa azungu chifukwa cha moyo umene amayenda mwa azungu ma resources amafikira mosavutikira. Kafuna upanga chinthu amakwaniritsa chifukwa ali nkuthekera kwakukulu siyana ndife ngati anthu akuda.
Ndi chani chomwe umaona ngati ndi chotchinga kufikira zomwe umafuna?
Chimene machiona chotchinga ndene ni chimodzi. Ndimaona kuti mwina mwayi wopita mu university lero waniponya chimene machiona chotchinga. Koma ngati kumbali ya fees ya Loving Arms anatigwira dzanja ndesinaso yotchingiriza pamenepo. Koma mwayi uli nkafikire ku college ngasipano sinafikireko ndi chimene machiona chotchinga pa moyo wanga mimi pano.
Chimene ukuchokera panopa kuti ukafikire ku university mune wanene umaona ngati chotchingacho ndi chiticho kwenikweni kuti ukafikire ku university?
Mwayi osankhidwa popena zimatheka kusiya ndeno makhala beso chasi yopita student ku university. Loving Arms yanithandiza kwambiri chifukwa dangu anitenga Loving Arms mandipilira fees ndinaimba sukulu mwatendere. Pamene asananditenga Loving Arms matheka wiki kukhala ndili kunyumba akanibweza fees. Pamene panopa makope amatithandiza zolembera amatithandiza fees isi mashora asai nimakhala full time nija ndi kusukulu mapanga zamaphunziro ine. Ndiye chimene ndimaona kuti dasintha moyo wanga kwambiri chifukwa ndigwira manja Loving Arms. Ndinokhala mtsikana wokafika wakuda ife ndilinewo umakumana ndi zokhoma zambiri. Zokhoma zake zili ngatizi ife atsikana kuno kwa Africa amalonera pasi amaona kuti filibe kuthekera kwambiri amangana anyamata amene amaona ngati ali kuthekera kwambiri kwatofira pena pake ndi sukulu. Amafuna atsikana angokhala ndi mwayi olakwalira azikasamala basi mabanja chani kuti maofesi amafunika anthu amuna amene amakhangala amapanga zinthu zochilimika pamene feso tisokuthekera kwali.
All right, thank you. Sunga, you can help us wrap up.
Yeah, I will wrap up. It was choppy at the end, but one thing that Patricia said or was echoing was they know the narratives that are said about them. They know what people, she talks about it being challenging because people look down on African Black girls. She specifically used Black. And she says it's because they think we should just get married and be lucky to marry someone to take care of us. But we will show them that we have the potential and we'll do that. So that was like the part that got chopped. So one thing that we wanted to draw on, or like where we wanted to end, is also like in our counter storying is the agential power in pursuing freedoms and rights. And that's been embodied by what Patricia said, that like they know the agency, they know that they need to push against some things. They know that what they're fighting for and what they need. Also, despite the destructive narratives, they're proud of their heritage and remain motivated. Both of them said they were really happy about where they were born, where they're from. And even Patricia said, even though she wants to go to like white people's countries or places, she wants to go there because of resources. And that's how she pictured that. So they know that like there's a resource and things like that. And we also noticed that their anxiety was because of not being able to get into college. So starting from the woman we saw at first, Patricia, and even Fortune, all of them highlighted that access to higher education is crucial to them, and their biggest fear is being unable to access the same opportunities as everyone. So from that, we learned that African girls are influential change makers in their communities, stepping up as natural leaders and activists. They are not just support recipients, they are at the forefront driving the change. Their activism is deeply influenced by their living conditions, their cultures, and their social and political realities they live in. They challenge old stories, they challenge the narrative. So whether it's fighting for better education or get into higher education, or just to be heard and to get into universities, as they have said, they are reshaping what it means to be a girl in Africa and showing the world the power of young activism in creating a better tomorrow. But they do it in a way that makes sense to them, a way that's for them, in ways that are for them. And so our job, and what I think we implore everyone, is just to stand with them in that journey. And so that's from us, the Loving Arms Collective, and that's where we end today.
All right, thank you. And I'll stop share. And then we're going to open up the floor for questions, any just initial reflections or any thoughts that people have in the audience that they want to contribute. So now we have the floor open.
Hi, my name is Palak. First of all, congratulations. The presentations were very insightful and I loved them all. I just wanted to ask about the thing humanizing. You were talking about humanizing, about the girls. So can you elaborate a little more on humanizing?
I can start us off and then maybe my two colleagues can share. So when we talk about humanizing, we're talking about it from an Ubuntu philosophy or philosophical framework. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ubuntu, but it's a Southern African concept of being and belonging. And the humanity of the individual is perceived to be rooted in the humanity of the collective. And so that, in essence, is seen as what it means to be human. So when we talk about humanness, when we talk about belonging within this framework, we're thinking about it from that philosophy. Others have used it as a theoretical lens, but we call it as a philosophy because it doesn't really fit in within the paradigms of what maybe maybe Western ways of theorizing. And so when we think of humanness, we're thinking about, how is it to live within this community? How, as a community, are we engaging to be able to ensure that even though we're a collective, we're still also ensuring that individuals have agency. And that is not easy to do. And so it requires a lot of intentionality. And so that's why as Loving Arms, we're very intentional about, about centering on girlhood agency in the programming that we do, to ensure that they're able to be active contributors to the work. And so I'll also maybe extend it to my colleagues to see if they have any other thoughts.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pempo. So yeah, just to add on a little bit to what Dr. Pempo shared, when we are thinking about humanistic forms of activities, we think of the community that we work with, our girls, as equal contributors of knowledge. So when we have ideas, we don't just go there and impose these ideas that we have on our girls or on the women that we work with, but we ask them to say that, okay, so we're thinking about having this project. What do you think about it? We're thinking about having a Tubirani Manja initiative where we tackle issues that are related to COVID-19 related challenges. What do you think about it? If they agree to say, yes, this is something we can do, then we do it together. We plan in collaboration with it together. We, as much as we can, we try to avoid doing studies on them, but together with them as equal contributors of knowledge. So that's where the humanizing forms of approach and research and activities is coming from. And maybe somebody else would also like to chime in if that's necessary. But yeah.
I think both of you have said it correctly, so I would give an opportunity to another question if we have.
Rosie?
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was really fascinating, and I kind of really admire the work that you're doing. I'm really interested in the Ubuntu-centric approach, and something that I was kind of thinking about because I'm currently writing up some research that I've done with girl activists in Lilongwe, and I can, like, in analyzing their words, I can see a really strong like Ubuntu kind of ethos within their own forms of activism and the kinds of changes that they want to see. It's a very sort of altruistic, like communitarian, like they have goals they want to achieve, but it's in order to lift other girls and women up, or it's in order to kind of make broader societal changes. And I was just really wondering if the girls that you are working with, do they identify it specifically as Ubuntu, or do they identify with the Ubuntu approach, or is that more kind of like your approach? Because although I can see it very strongly in the girls' words and their actions, they never specifically kind of talk about Ubuntu, and I don't know if that's because they probably assume that I wouldn't have a clue what they were talking about, or whether like it's more almost on a sort of subconscious level.
Yeah, that is a great question, especially, and it's something someone has never asked, like I do a lot of Ubuntu-centered work, and I've never, no one has ever asked, do they talk about Ubuntu? So one thing I think as someone who's Malawian, and we're all Malawian on the panel, because theorizing Ubuntu from the everyday is a bit different from how we are conceptualizing it in this space. And so in our daily conversations, depending on the context and what you're talking about, you hear people say, ulibe umuntu, which means you don't have, and it's even hard to translate it into English because I don't, I don't know if that would,
You don't have
you don't have
humanity, and that's our normal everyday interactions, and it's like calling out when someone does something that is inappropriate, or someone does something that's really kind and supportive for a community, for an individual, and someone will say alindu umuntu, and so basically just pointing that out. So in our daily conversations and being, we actually mention it, and because it's a Southern African philosophy and concept, it's called different things. Others call it Utu, Ubuntu, Umuntu. So in our native tongue, we call it Umuntu. And so it's actually, now that I think about it, it's something that even we engage with it in our everyday life. So probably in the recordings, the girls didn't point to it, but for sure, it's something that, people will say as part of their everyday. And I'll pass it on.
Yeah, and I do also think the other way it shows up, especially in activism or advocacy for them, is when they tell us where, like, the focus of something. So I give an example of like learning groups, or when we did the root cause analysis before we started the scholarship fund, one thing they said was like, we're looking for a space to exist together, or like to do it together, like communally. So there have been times that they have embodied it by just redirecting where we are focusing on something, or saying, maybe when we are setting a priority for that, could you consider setting it like this, or like, this is what we want. And so even when we go, because they're very cute, they would tell stories about things that they're seeing. So they would do it, like Lavinia said, sometimes they'll do it in drama, they'll do it in song, they'll do it in different ways, and you can sort of see it in there. So even if because it's something we embody every day, they will just live it. And then when it's time for advocacy, they will push for community things. Like there are times that they will say, hey, I am me, I need this. But like most of the times they will push for like collective programming. They will push for even involvement of other girls that are not in the scholarship fund, but part of the community. They will push for them to be included in some sort of programming. So you sort of see it in things like those.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? We have about 5 minutes left. If there are no questions, we did have a question. We did have a question, and we were just curious to just learn from you, just from the work that we have shared and some of the things that maybe the girls have also highlighted. What are some of your reflections about girlhood, especially in its heterogeneities, in the spaces that you are, and thinking of especially when it comes to schooling, when it comes to culture and power, and also and we didn't want to say poverty, but maybe when we think of luck and abundance, and at the same time the in between. And so maybe as you think about that, I saw a comment in the chat from Dr. Nyari. Thank you for the question. And you're saying, I am just curious about where Patricia and Fortune are now in terms of their academic journeys. Thank you for that question. So Fortune and Patricia actually wrote their national exam. So Malawi has a national standardized test that everyone takes when they're completing their secondary education. And they did an amazing job, and they really performed really well. And so maybe you saw in the video, one of them said she had 20 points. So that's basically an aggregation of their scores. And so anything that's like 25 below is great, because it helps you apply for college. And if you saw, and Sunga highlighted this a bit, is they are concerned about going into college because there aren't a lot of universities in Malawi. So it's really hard to get in. And so I think one of her worries was, especially for all the three women that we saw, they were concerned about getting in. And so right now we are trying to help them identify institutions, because they really performed very well in their final, like their secondary education assessment. And so we're hoping that they'll be able to apply to different colleges in Malawi and hopefully internationally, and then pursue their higher education.
And Fortune actually also told us, because she got 26, she told us that she wanted to go back and try to make sure that she gets less. So she's still in the process, together with Patricia, of applying to college, but she's also going to school because she says she knows she can do better than that. And because I think she wants to increase her chances of getting into a competitive university. So she's doing both, while Patricia is just applying for universities at the moment.
All right, maybe there's time for one comment or question.
Well, I was just going to jump in if no one else is on your really interesting kind of question that you asked us, because this is something that I've been reflecting on as well, is, because I talked to the girls that I was doing research with and their school director about this idea of kind of showing how Malawian girls are very active participants and in their own kind of lives and communities, and how they were sort of challenging a lot of a lot of what they came up against, and not, kind of countering these sort of victim depictions often in sort of international development. And that's something I reflect on a lot, is that one of the school directors said to me, yeah, but don't tell them we're fine though. And I just wonder if you ever kind of come across that as well, this kind of that sort of tension between trying to show African girlhood in a different way, but then also this idea, that this very really strongly, this director said to me, but don't go and tell everyone we're fine, because they did have girls dropping out of school from poverty and so on. So it's kind of trying to navigate that balance between depicting them as activists, but also not like ignoring the many challenges they face.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think for us, there's like the reality of poverty is real, and like there are people living in poverty in the communities that we work in. They are experiencing poverty, but also there's a reality of they don't want to be depicted by that narrative of like they are the word that's coming to my head, I don't want to use that, but there are people impoverished people, for lack of a better word. We don't want that. So like, and I think one of the things that we have had so much tension of that is that standpoint, because we had an opportunity to raise funds on one of the biggest platforms, but they wanted us to center on the poverty narrative. And we were like, well, that's not what we want, because that's what they're saying they don't want to be portrayed as, because that's not who they want their story to be about. And so I think we as a collective have tried to find ways where we're not centering on the poverty, we are raising money, and we can give statistical truth about this is a poverty that is being experienced, this is like the problems that are happening, without centering that on the girl. So we can generally talk about Nambuma or Doa, or the way that Doa is experiencing marginalization due to poverty, without that being about the girls, or saying, hey, look at our girls and this is what they're experiencing. And so that's what we have. And I think for us, maybe we are lucky in a way that pushback to center on their poverty hasn't come from our communities, or like the Malawi community, has actually come from like outside international communities that we have tried to work with. And while the Malawian internal communities have been like, yes, this is the reality, but that's not the lens through which we want to be looked at.
Yeah, thank you, Sunga. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in our session. We're at time right now, and so we're going to pass it on to the Girlhood Studies Collective team.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you so much. Please, everyone, join me in just, a silent thanks for this wonderful roundtable. We are so privileged that you all submitted and joined us, and to the girls who are also in the work and through their videos. It was such a beautiful touch. So thank you so much. We'll wrap up, and we have a little break now, and then the next panel will start at 12:15. Eastern time, should say that. Thank you so much again. Okay.
Thank you.